Today, my guest is Chris Prefontaine. He's got 25 plus years experience in real estate as a builder, developer, a realtor, real estate investor, and also a best-selling author. And in just a minute, we're going to speak with Chris about one of his books and just the basic topic, real estate on your terms. But first, a quick reminder, if you like the show, CREPN Radio, please let us know. You can like, you can share, you can subscribe. And as always, if you leave a comment, we would love to hear from you, our listeners. Also, if you'd like to see how handsome our guests are, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, and you can find us at Commercial Real Estate Pro Network. With that, I want to welcome my guest, Chris. Welcome to CREPN Radio.
Thank you, Darren. Pleasure to be here, my friend.
I'm looking forward to our talk today. Before we get started, if you could take just a minute and share with the listeners a little bit about your background.
Sure. At the risk of dating myself, I've been at this in some shape, form, or another since 1991, actually. So going on almost 30 years. That's pretty scary. I did some spot building. I called it back then single-family homes, way back when I didn't really understand what terms meant, and we never took out bank loans. We would build on someone else's land, and then we would pre-sell the home, and then at the very end, when the buyer cashed us out, everybody got paid, including contractors. Did that for a while. Then bought a Realty Executives franchise, put my broker hat on, had never done that as a realtor. Ultimately built that and sold it to Coldwell Banker in 2000. And then from 2000 till the lovely crash, we were doing our own properties. We were coaching people throughout North America. And then, like so many people in the U.S. anyway, at least, got beat up with the crash. And that caused us to re-engineer everything we do. And here we are.
Got it. So your experience definitely from ground up, it sounds like, as far as construction and then into sales and coaching. Maybe a good place to start it would be the how deals were financed pre-crash. When you were an investor, how were you negotiating or how were you structuring the deals that you were doing?
Yeah, I can remember specifically. So let's take it from like after I sold my company to Coldwell Bank, I was doing what everyone, I still think to this day, considers to be the conventional way, either borrowing hard money, from some sort of other investor who just has money to put to work, or bank loans. And both of those meant I was signing personally on them. And so I thought nothing of it. Credit was great. Market was great. They were giving out money to almost anyone, as long as you had good credit. And so we ran with that. The problem was when things come rolling down, where they come knocking, whoever signed personally, right? They don't care why the market came down or whatever. They're going to where the personal signature is. And that was the big problemo.
Right. No, and in that mess, when everybody was caught, you weren't alone. How willing were the banks to work with you on that?
Not too. No, we had like 22 or 23 properties back then, and they were either going through by force, short sale, some sort of liquidation, or foreclosure. Two or three of them had to go for foreclosure. So it was pretty ugly. It was a part-time job, if not full-time. I remember like it was yesterday because my son had shared an office with me. He was like right next to me, and he learned a boatload through those times. And so it was very interesting. So they weren't. I mean, creditors were, because you can call a creditor, you can call a credit card, you can call a collections card, you can call them and you can negotiate. Banks don't care. As long as they know you have assets, especially, they're coming.
Right.
So that took me a better part of probably 8 or 10 years to be totally done. But 4 years, it was pretty busy just doing workouts.
Gotcha. And in that, you mentioned it's kind of a full-time job. Were the properties that were in question, were they all investments, or were these some construction projects, or?
Good question. You think, I remember specifically I had a 6-unit construction project going on. I gave that back to the bank amicably. They were fine because it was, their costs were low. I had a boatload of my cash, investor cash in it. So the bank was good. Had a 6-unit, here's a good story, a 6-unit building. We were doing condominium conversions back then because you could buy a 6-unit, let's say in this case, or a 3. And before you get the condominium docs drafted and engineered, attorney and engineer, they had them pre-sold. I mean, it was crazy. So here's some numbers for you. We had a building, 6 units in Rhode Island. First 2 or 3 sold for like 172. I remember like it was yesterday, full price. The third or fourth, whatever the next unit was, it was like a light switch was thrown. We couldn't get 50 grand. So that's 2/3 in this particular
Wow.
area drop in Providence, Rhode Island. If our life depended on it. Like I remember the other owners wouldn't even touch them for 50 grand. And so that's okay. So what do? You got the construction loan, you got, bank loans. It was crazy. You couldn't get out of those. There's no way around it.
Wow. So in those, were you basically just selling them at a floor then, or what were you? Did you?
We couldn't even sell them on the floor at that point. So that one in particular was a hard money lender that to this day we're super good friends, because instead of hiding, one of my good friends said, "Look, this is back when it was happening." He said, "Look, you didn't take the national market down. Call who you can call and tell them, look, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I'll work with you if it takes me 10 years." And I said that to this guy, and he was 20 years my senior, and we had lunch. And to this day, I've made do with him, and he's made other deals with us since then. But it was because I communicated. So you say, well, did they cooperate? Well, he did, but he was private.
Right. Right. No, it's kind of a lesson that I think, hopefully we haven't forgotten. I think sometimes I
Right.
wonder if things don't kind of inch back, but I think that, every market has its own dynamics. And clearly back then, the money was, cheap, and there was a goal to put people in houses. And, there was, rightly or wrongly, the lending got a little loose, and I don't think anybody was anticipating, uh, as bad as it could be. I mean, we have always had corrections. I mean, it's part of the cycle. But anyway, there's a lot of stories, a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah.
So all right. So prior to the crash, you're doing the traditional thing, hard money and bank financing. You're signing on the line there, and as the situation developed, the signature became worth more. I'm assuming you understood more of what you were signing up for. Uh,
Good
as
way of
opposed
saying it
to,
lightly there, Darren. Thank you.
well, I think there's a lot of things. Anytime you go sign a loan, there's how many times are you signing, and the volume of paper kind of prevents anyone from really. I mean, I shouldn't say anyone. I know some people that sit there and will read the whole thing.
Or their attorney's super sharp, maybe,
Yeah, and to their credit, at least they have some sort of a sense. Or at least they're taking the opportunity, whether or not they understand everything they're signing. Um, Whereas now, I'm still kind of just perplexed by how much like DocuSign and all that is basically,
Yeah.
sent me a PDF and told me to sign the thing one time and click the button and blink. It's
Yep.
I've signed for everything. So I don't know that the more signatures and all that stuff has improved anything. I think it's just adding more layers of an opportunity for somebody to well, let me put it this way: whoever's authoring the contract it's protecting them. It's not protecting you, the
Of
guy that's
course.
signing the contract. So,
Yep.
but so anyway, well, let's roll forward then. So you got caught, and as did many, and lessons you learned. What are the takeaways from that, and how have you changed your
Yeah.
forward financing?
So they're the same answer, right? It's because everything that happened then caused us. I get to the point where I was like, am I even going to like go into real estate? That's how spent I was. And then I said, okay, so what could we do if we were to go aggressively, stay in aggressively real estate? Well, terms is the answer. It's buying property. I don't care if it's commercial, residential, retail, a boat, a car, doesn't matter. It buying things on terms without banks. In my case, lease purchase, owner financing, to name 2. And people say over and over and over, I don't know if I can do that in my area. I don't think sells it. No, they do. Because I not just our own family company here with my son and son-in-law, we buy homes every month, but in properties and multis in our own office building. Okay, so I know it works, but we've got about 80 what we call associates now around North America, mostly U.S., that also do it. So we represent a lot of different states now. So so the lesson was don't sign personally. So do it by using those vehicles I just said, and don't use your own cash or leverage your own cash. Here, as recently as yesterday, My CFO said to me in a meeting with two other employees, did you know instead of doing one of those SBA loans for your company, you could take on an equity loan on your house, be really cheap? And I said, absolutely not. It's not happening. It's never going to happen again, because I did that pre-08. And so I said, my debt to equity is 17%, not the inverse like I always was doing. It's next to nothing, and it's never going to be higher than that. So all that to say, the lesson was the personal signature, Darren. And then when I say no personal money, I also mean no investor money. Unless we're doing something really special where we're taking a seller out or doing something unique, we're not going to borrow and signing on anything.
So where, I guess let's back up here. So I get basically the simple answer is it's not your money. You're looking at a lease or seller financing. What are some keys that you look for, or some tells? Because I think that anybody that's looking on would it be the MLS or through LoopNet or a commercial broker,
Yeah.
the first choice or the first thought that goes through everybody's mind is, conventional financing, that the seller is going to get cashed out.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that is it just, would you go to any deal and ask this, or is there a specific type of deal that you're looking for that makes sense for this kind of thing?
Yeah, good question. I'll give you a few answers. About a third of the properties in the United States are free and clear. Different pockets, different percentages, but roughly speaking. And so that's a great pond to fish in, so to speak, because if they needed cash out, presumably they would have yanked it out. And they're usually the ones that'll be open, not only open, but inviting people to structure something on terms. And I alluded to it earlier, but this office building is exactly the case. He's 70 years old or 71. He wanted terms. He wanted 20-year terms. We usually do like 3, 5, 10. He wanted a long term. In fact, he forgot to write in a due on sale. He said, I don't want to be cashed out. I want you to make sure you're clear on that. In other words, he doesn't want me to refinance and never pay him off until 20 years, even though he's 71. So that was more of an estate and tax issue, I'm sure. So they're out there. So you got to niche and find them. I'll give you another example. We bought a 6 and a 4 unit in the same town. How do we buy them? We said, we'd like to add a multi or 2 more to our portfolio, and we'd like it to be 4 to 10 units. So we literally mailed 326. It was small pieces of mail, and we mailed them 3 times. Tweaked the letters a little differently. Regular number 10 envelope. We bought those 2 homes for that. Now, what was the criteria? 4 to 6 units, free and clear. Both of those are free and clear. Both were structured owner financing, no money down. And here's the key for the recession resistant: principal only payments, no interest. No interest. They got their price. They were happy to do that. And I'll pay their price or a premium as long as I get my term in principal only payments. And they both did that. As an example. 3 examples, because my office building too.
Principal only.
Mm-hmm.
So that just seems to be kind of counter. Basically it's just you're reducing, every payment goes direct to principal.
100%.
And so tell me, why is it more of just, like you said, like the tax issues? That would primarily one of the
Tax, and some of it, yeah, some of it's ego, believe it or not. They want their price, and that's stuck in their brain no matter what you do. So I got to get my price. Okay. So if you give me 4 or 5 year term, I'll give you a price. If you give me longer, I'll give you more than your price. Because let's just give you an example. One of the houses I did, it was a 4-year term, principal payments, I'll use round numbers, were $1,000 a month. Each year I went to them and said, if I pay $6,000 more down on the principal, I'm putting it down against principal, will you extend my term 12 months? I did it 2 years in a row. They said, sure. So I get $12,000 in principal pay down by prepaying some principal. And then now here's the twist. So I do incorporate interest if I have to. So this year, it would have been the 3rd year that I would have asked for that. They said, hey, you can do that thing again. And I said, well, instead, why don't we extend it 15 years? You've been getting no interest, and I'll add 4.5% interest and we'll amortize it over the next 15 years. And their accountant loved it. So we took a 4-year deal and made it into 2 extensions. So it went to 6 years, and then 15 went to 21 years. So I do
but
combine
you got the
them.
principal paid down there for the first, in the front end there. That's
Huge.
beautiful. Yeah.
That's what does it. So now here's a quasi combination. This guy at this building said, I want 5.5% interest, old school, owns a lot of land, big investor, said, that's what I want. So, okay, well, I usually buy principal only. So let me structure something I think you'll like. What I did with him is I said, we put more cash down as our office bill. I think we put like 30 something down. We broke the mold on that. We usually don't put cash down, but we did like 30 something grand down. But then we did heavy principal payments. I think it was like $2,000 a month, all the way for almost the first full year. And then we amortized it at 5.2%. He was happy and I was happy because we hammered the principal right away.
No, that's really kind of, I mean, that's the secret the bank doesn't want you to know, right? I look at, most loans, I mean, it takes you about 5 years really before you start, at least 5 years before you really start, hitting the principal.
For sure.
And to be able to do that on the front end there, that's beautiful to get really kind of a running start on your pay down. So, you mentioned like a third of the properties throughout the U.S. are free and clear. Does it matter on the market? Do you find there's any? Do you find it more plentiful in bigger markets, smaller markets? Is it just
terms in general, lease purchase, owner financing, subject to existing financing, those are, you have to talk to a few more people, extra people, if the market's hot, right? Even as hot as the market's been with our students spread out, there are some pockets that have been flat since 2012. And it's great. It's great to buy in that market. It's great to buy in a slightly downward trending. But when it's screaming straight up, it's a little harder. You just have to talk to more people because the people that are free and clear, they're not desperate in any shape, form, or fashion. They want their number.
Right.
So that's the key.
So it's kind of a numbers game, but you've got your parameters figured out. And you said you market, how many postcards were you mailing out?
We don't do a lot of mailings when we teach our students to. We only mailed out one batch of 300 something, and we did that 3 times, and we got 2 properties out of it. It's crazy. I think each one of those we profited over 100 each. We've already flipped them, just improving the NOI.
Got it. And you've demonstrated it works for single family, commercial, multifamily.
Works for all the above. We've done all the above. Now we teach on a broader scale, mostly single family. They can make it pre-recession proof because they can pound down principal and they're always sellable. So we do teach that, and we own a lot of those. We carry like 50 or 60 of these at any one time in our portfolio, not counting our students. And we're not on one single loan, as to my earlier point. So, I go to bed at night knowing, all right, I mean, our contracts are set up properly where the loans are never in our name. On a lease purchase, for example, Darren, the loan stays in the seller's name. So that's a no-brainer.
So let's walk through a lease purchase for a second. So you identify a seller, and you say the seller has financing already in place.
Yeah, so I'll give you a scenario. There's obviously many because some are upside down, some are debt free. Well, let's do like a standard. We get all our leads on the single family side from for sale by owner, for rent by owner, and expired listings that realtors can't sell or didn't sell. Let's use real not round simple numbers. Let's take a house that's worth 300, and they've got 250,000 equity. I'm sorry, 250,000 on mortgage, 50,000 equity, and for whatever reason it didn't sell or didn't sell in their time frame. So we come in and say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, provided you don't need that 50 today because you didn't get it, it didn't sell in the market yet. If you can wait on that, I'll protect the entire 50. You probably weren't going to get 50. They agree. Yeah, I would have got a little lower. I would have paid some fees, realtor, whatever. So we're going to protect your 50,000 chunk, but we're going to do that on or before the end of the term of the lease purchase. Usually let's use 3 years for this one. And at the end of that term, we're going to give you your 50. And we're going to pay off the underlying debt. Now it's 250 today, but it's not going to be 250 then. So that helps us. So that's, if a seller can wait for that and wants to protect that number, it's a great way for them to do it. And on our end, what do we do in the single families? We fill it with a buyer that needs more time, or we call it a rent own. But it's basically a strong buyer that just needs time to get financing, credit, down payment, whatever.
Gotcha. Is there a sweet spot for that kind of opportunity for you? I mean, I'm assuming somebody's further along in their mortgage would be more attractive than somebody that just financed yesterday.
More attractive for us, yes. But another good pond to fish in, just because you brought that up, is I have one of my students who's having a real successful time with He buys a list, tiny list again, a few hundred. He buys a list that is little to no equity bought in the last 2 to 5 years, who they're looking for debt relief. They've got to move out of the area and they can't sell the thing because there's no spread. Those people are typically giving us long term so we can hedge against the market. And we either do a lease purchase or buy it subject to that existing loan staying in the seller's name. That's another good list. Like there's all these, sub lists, not just those categories I said, that we just listen to we call it our wicked smart community, but we listen to our students and we know what's working in every market.
So in the lease purchase, basically you've got a couple of paydays. Then you get the, obviously when you sell, there's the cash out. And I presume that's between the amount you've pre-negotiated with the seller plus whatever the pay down of the mortgage is, that spread, that's where you're going to get that.
Plus the markup. Yeah.
Right. And then are you, and then you obviously sell for more than what you agreed to. And then are you able to make some more on like a rent spread between what your mortgage payment and the rent?
Yeah. Yeah, we call that payday 2. So what you said first, we call it payday 3. Payday 2 is the difference between the outgo and the income, right? It could be the bank or the owner, whatever, but there's a spread there. We average, we're lower than our students. Actually, we average like $310 on that one. On the back end, we average like 35-40. And then on the front end, payday 1, that's when a buyer comes in and has to put down a non-refundable down payment. And that range is like 26, 27 grand for us. So our deals are like 75 grand deals, and they cash out between 18 months and 10 years. So you get this cool spread of, here's my predictable cash flow, let's say in a dozen deals, stop, scale it up. You get flexibility versus one flip or one wholesale or one rehab, it's 3 paydays.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's no lack of capital. I mean, that's a very appealing, benefit to your strategy there. Can you talk about some, and we talked a little bit about the benefits. I mean, the sellers of the tax and the ego are kind of the two things it sounds like you're appealing to. Any challenges explaining this to a seller? I mean, is there any resistance, or is there kind of a longer cycle to getting somebody to agree to it? Or is it more like the people you're finding, they've been hoping somebody like you would come along?
Many of them, good way of saying it, buyer side too, but many of the sellers, it's not difficult to explain it to them if you just use the proper scripts up front. The proper script up front is, hey, Darren, if you got your price I see here, are you open to doing that on lease purchase or on financing? Or do you need your money today? And if they say, no, I got to fail me, I need my cash, or I got this building, I got to do a 1031 tomorrow. If they have to do it now, then I say, okay, no worry, I'm not the buyer. If anything changes, use me as a plan B. It's that simple. If they say, interesting, I'm open to that. Great. Let me come see the property and I'll give you the different options. So it's just that initial conversation and then finding out why they're selling, because if I can fix whatever it is, I want the best price. I can't sell because I'm upside down. If I can fix that, there is no explaining. I'm just giving them a solution.
Got it. What's the largest type property you've done on a lease purchase?
I'll give you us, and I'll give you a student. So we have one currently. We actually did it owner financing, 950,000 waterfront at Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Wow. We still have it. We keep renegotiating, extending the term out, which is great. Largest lease purchase for us, probably around 1.1 million. I have a student in DC who the 800 to the 1.4 is like the norm. So he's done like a 1.8 to 2 million. It's just, what the answer is? It's the sweet spot is the median price range in any market. And then the higher end, I tell them, look for those, but don't like bank on those because they're slower to cash out. Sometimes they're slower to find. There's less of them. When the market softens, those get hit. All these reasons, don't do a ton of them, but stick to your median and you're safe.
No, that's awesome. So for somebody looking to get started, what would be some keys that you would suggest they consider, or how to get started?
Well, I would answer this way, regardless of whatever show this was. Like literally, it could be a show about restaurants, and I'm going to answer the same way. Pick a niche, in this case, in real estate, that you can get excited about. There's so many of them. There's Airbnb, there's apartments, there's all kinds of niches. Once you find that, then find someone. So you're comfortable. You go, this is it. I can get behind this. Then find someone in that niche that's like doing it. Not did it 20 years ago, not wrote a book about it, not is a really good marketer, because just they're still doing it. They're in the trenches. Then once you find that, here's the big challenge. People get like all these shiny objects. They watch the late night commercials and get rich quick. So number three is commit to it. I don't care whatever it is, commit to it for 36 months with blinders on. Like whatever that group person, board of directors or mentor or coach says, you be with that for 36 months and don't look left, right, or backwards. And I don't care again what business you're in, restaurants, hot dog stand, real estate, you'll have a phenomenal experience. If you do that simple formula, it's the third piece. It's so hard for people to manage expectations and patience and sticking with someone.
No, that's I found that in my own experience. The 3 years is really kind of a proven. Um, I think it gives the market a chance to see that you're still there. I think
That's a
if
huge point, actually.
yeah,
And I don't usually say it, but that you're right, because there's some credibility there. But also not, but and also, like they'll do a deal much sooner than that. But I know if mentally they're committed to 3 years, they're not going to waffle when a curveball comes their way, which it will.
sure, but I think even more to be ultimately successful in it is that traction. You build the traction along the way, but in 3 years, everybody's going to know that you are the guy that's still there, that's doing it. Oh yeah, and whether it be your reps, I mean, you're getting plenty of practice to where you know the deal, you've done deals. Word's going to be around. I would think that your long-term success is really uh, be really strong, as opposed to you get in, you get the one hit right away and you think this is easy, and then you
Yeah.
find out that there's a lot of work and it's not as easy. And
Yeah. No, well said.
so hey, I do have a question about tax. So since you're not taking title to the property, is basically the income just treated as ordinary income then, or do you get any depreciation or anything like that with any of the?
Okay, it gets even better. But to answer that direct question, no depreciation or anything unless you're buying it subject to the existing financing and taking title. You are correct. It follows title. That's what I tell people. It
Okay.
follows the deed. However, here's what's really cool. So let's say one of our students asked me this morning. He's from Florida, and he said, "What do I do? What do I tell my accountant?" He did his first what we call a sandwich lease deal, where he didn't take title. He's just in the middle. Here's what's neat. Payday one that we got up front, the non-refundable down payment. That's payday one. When you get that, you don't have to. You can. The IRS would love you if you reported it, but they don't have to report that until and unless the option is exercised or defaulted. Then you get to claim it. So I can take a deal where I get my 26 grand up front and it doesn't cash out for 3 years. I get that 26 grand. I don't have to pay tax on until year 3. Now, you may want to. I'm not an accountant. This is what I do with my accountant. We picked a formula so that we don't get whacked. If we had a whole bunch that were turning out the same year, we don't get whacked. So we picked a formula that every deal we do report a percentage of it, and the other goes on our books as a deposit. So A, the IRS loves us because we're actually pre-reporting income, and B, we're not going to get stuck at some point and be behind. So you just got to plan that out with your accountant.
So you said it's essentially like an accounts receivable then? Is that what I mean, because it has been recognized until the sales complete,
We
is that?
actually put it on like you would a conventional sale. We put it on as a liability deposit, even though it's non-refundable. That's how he holds it on my books. Again, I'm not an accountant,
Okay, sure.
but and then so let's say I get 20 grand. We report 10 of it as income that year. So it goes to, we literally have payday one on our income statement for income coming in, ordinary income. And then the other half, the 10 will sit in a deposit liability payday one account. You can
Got it.
spend it, but it's going to sit on our books as that.
Sure. And then as far as the installments, that's just ordinary income then, as far as that comes in,
Yeah,
or?
because all you're doing then, you don't have the loan. So all you're doing is lease income in and lease expense out when you pay the underlying debt. And that difference is just your income. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, it's certainly a creative way, and I don't even see creative way, because I think that what I do recognize, just like you pointed out, that there's so many people out there that they've owned the property forever. How are they going to get out of it? This is an attractive term. It keeps them. They don't have to mess with the property anymore. They've got income coming in. Um, so definitely a win-win for the person that that has this as an option, it seems like definitely a good solution.
Yeah, and if you're doing single families, it's a win-win-win because the buyers. I mean, we've had some buyers there in tears thinking, "Man, because of my bankruptcy, or because of my divorce, I thought I never could buy again." And we give them this
Right.
pathway, and so it's super healthy, in my opinion, energy-wise, to be win-win-win. That's not easy to get, especially these days.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Hey, Chris, if we could, I'd like to shift gears here. Uh, by day, I'm an insurance broker, and I work with clients to assess risk and try and manage the risk. And there's a couple of different strategies we typically use. The first is we look and see, is there a way to avoid the risk? If we can't do that, then we look and see if there's a way to minimize the risk. And if neither of these are an option, then we look to see if we can transfer the risk, and that's what an insurance policy is. And so I like to ask my guests if they can identify what they consider to be the biggest risk. And just to be clear, I'm not necessarily looking for insurance related answer. But with that, if you're willing, Chris Prefontaine, I'd like to ask you, what is the biggest risk?
I don't want to sound like a redundant broken record, but in my world, so it comes right to the top of my brain when you ask that, is you signing personally and exposing your personal assets to anyone or anything. Got to be the number one in my world.
No, that's definitely as you've witnessed, if everything goes bad and you've got well, it is a risk. I mean, that's just point blank. It is a risk, and if the payments aren't made as agreed by or as expected by the lender, they're coming to you, right?
Yeah, and I make one exception just to be clear and just full disclosure, and that is a personal residence. But using my methods, my son-in-law and daughter bought their own house on terms, but I wasn't able to. I had to do mine conventionally. But if you can do that, make that an extremely, low loan to value. That's all. Mitigate it that way.
Got it. Got it. Chris, where can the listeners go if they'd like to learn more and connect with you?
Simple. They can just go to the website, smartrealestatecoach.com, or Smart Real Estate Coach podcast is our show. But what I had said to you off air, and I'll offer to everybody, is we have a hard copy, hardcover and hard copy, Amazon bestseller, Real Estate on Your Terms, that we sent you. And if the listeners go to this link I'll give them and just say they heard us on your show, we'll go ahead and ship one out to them, physically ship it out, not electronic. And it's not one of those, hey, put your credit card and you got to pay $10 for shipping. We will ship it out. It costs me a little over $6 plus the book. And we do that as long as they say they were on your show. The link is free, SREC, stands for Smart Real Estate Coach, free, SREC, book.com.
Got it. SREC.book.com?
No, free, SREC, book.com.
Gotcha. Free. Got that on the front end there. Okay. Awesome.
It'll give them a lot of what we talked about.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I'm sure you'll get some requests for that. And I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, no problem. My team will be maybe not so psyched with me, but away we go.
All right. Well, Chris, I can't say thanks enough for taking the time to talk today.
Sure.
I've enjoyed it and learned a lot, and hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Darren. Appreciate it.
All right. For our listeners, if you like this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.